in a certain order.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's CC meeting. We hope you are all doing well. And we will jump right away into the burning issues in Europe. And I think we will maybe start with Yannis and an overview of the burning issues, and then we go through everyone's country. If you would be nice to put in your name then in the chat.
Thank you, Juliana. A number of issues are burning across Europe. I'll just go through them and then try to put them together from the DiEM25 perspective. The scandal with vaccinations is escalating. It is clear now that there was corruption in the way that the European Union ordered vaccines. 300 million vaccines were ordered from a French company that never produced them, and that created a shortfall of the BioNTech vaccine that does work. And meanwhile, even though there was an agreement at the level of the EU that it wouldn't be every country for itself, but that there would be a joint order and centralized distribution system, according to which each country would get a number of vaccines in proportion to population. It's clear that Jens Spahn, a man I know well personally, because he used to be Wolfgang Schäuble's number 2 in the finance ministry back in 2015. Jens Spahn, the finance minister, the health minister, has ordered at least 35 million doses outside the centralized European system. Even the president of the European Commission promised to start a process of reprimanding Berlin for this. Of course, it's not going to happen, but it just goes to show that the European Union is not a real union. We are operating both as a corrupt union and a non-union, a disunion. That's topic number 1. Topic number 2 is the Greek Prime Minister, for once, opened his mouth at the EU level. He has never done this before. Up until now, he's been a yes man. Now he decided to take the initiative on something. And it was a complete fiasco and a catastrophe, but also a very dangerous one. The initiative he took, you may have heard of it, is that he sent a letter to the European Commission and proposed the institution of something he called the vaccination passport. So that if you're vaccinated, you get a passport or certificate or an electronic thing, which allows you to travel freely. And if you don't have it, then you don't travel freely. I attacked him severely in Parliament on this, even though, E22 has steadfastly supported vaccination and the vaccination drive and have opposed the anti-vaxxers as a highly problematic movement, if you can call it that. Nevertheless, the Greek Prime Minister gave them a major boost with this idiotic idea. And I said it's idiotic for at least 4 reasons. The first reason is that the very makers of the vaccines tell us they have no way of certifying that if you're vaccinated, you're not going to transmit it to somebody else. So I'm vaccinated, doesn't mean I don't wear masks, which means it's irrelevant whether you have been vaccinated or not for the purposes of spreading the bloody thing. Secondly, what do you do with people who actually had COVID-19, suffered through it, and now have antibodies and T cells? Do you make them get vaccinated, or do you leave them out of the vaccination certificate? Thirdly, once you establish the principle at the level of the EU that you can have that you may be asked to produce a certificate with medical information on it. I mean, you open a Pandora's box. Where do you stop? Now we have COVID-19. Next we're going to have COVID-20. What about other kinds of diseases? If you have it for one, why not for the others? And where does that stop? How do you stop employers or organizations or, whatever, clubs or cafeterias who are asking people to produce that certificate before they're let in. And, this creating this kind of apartheid, I shouldn't use this word, it's the wrong word, but this kind of discrimination is very divisive. It doesn't work, and it gives ammunition to the anti-vaxxers. So anyway, there's a fourth reason as well, but I won't go into that now. Okay, let's move beyond the vaccination issue. Remember back in June when the European Union was announcing the recovery fund, EU Next Generation, whatever they call it. Sounds like Star Trek, but it isn't. The recovery fund, and I was lambasting it for being macroeconomically insignificant and also divisive and another way of bringing in austerity. Jordi is here, he's going to confirm or deny this, but I've been reading up that already there is the first instance of pension cuts that are being legislated or about to be legislated in Spain. We are being told that something similar will happen here. And it is abundantly clear that even though it's not formalized, informally, what Madrid has been told by Brussels is if you want money from the recovery fund, you have to cut pensions. And you have to do these structural reforms. Dombrovskis, the vice president from Latvia, whose great claim to fame is that he reduced the population of Latvia by 30% as a way of ridding the country of unemployment, has confirmed in no uncertain terms that structural reforms, and you know what that means, it means austerity, are the price that countries will have to pay for recovery fund money. So recovery fund money will be minuscule. My latest estimation is that we're talking about 0.6% of GDP annually over 4 years, maybe less, when you need a stimulus of at least 7% in order to stabilize, let alone grow or develop Eurozone economies. So it is minuscule, it is insignificant, and it is a tool by which to introduce new austerity in the European Union. Meanwhile, our political scene is collapsing in the sense that now it is more irrelevant than ever. The shenanigans in Italy with, Conte winning a majority, but not an absolute majority, and Renzi being the one who brought him down, but in the end he abstained and not voted against him. The total lack of a political debate in France, the elevation of Laschet to the leadership of the CDU, which believes everything unresolved regarding who is going to be the chancellor. The government in Portugal, which is simply on autopilot, implementing the same old stagnation policies of the Troika. The way in which Ireland, Holland, Luxembourg continue to act as magnets of financialization and tax evasion by large corporations. And this is not new, of course, but what is new is the acceleration of this. It's getting worse. The problem is getting better. And on the other side of the Atlantic, you have the kitsch show, which happens every 4 years. It's called the Enthronement of the Emperor. The sight of our friend Bernie Sanders is something that has given me a lot of pain. Whoever saw him on, sideline, but there, that's the fate of the left in the United States. So Trump is out, but Trumpism is gathering pace because the causes of Trumpism are now in power in the United States. I think I've spoken enough. Yet again, once more, the conclusion is that never have we been as important as now as a movement, and never have we faced such a difficult task in making a difference.
Thank you very much, Yannis, for this analysis. I think we have a little bit more deeper information on what's happening in Italy now from Patrizia.
Yes, thank you, Juliana, for the word. We definitely got over our government crisis. In fact, 2 days ago, after a vote of confidence in Parliament, our Prime Minister got the necessary votes to move ahead with his government. But now, what happens? This crisis was not supposed to be done, actually, because at the end of the game was born by the personal disputes between our Prime Minister and one of the leaders of our parties. So now the only result is that we have in Italy a weaker government completely hostage of the opposition. When the country really needs to focus on priorities, which are, I think these priorities are the same for the whole Europe. We need to focus on health, school, job, ecological transition, and digitalization. And now all the Italians, all people are looking on how this government can move on after what happened. But the good news that we are definitely over this kind of stuff. We can keep going straight and see what happens. I don't know if Simona would like to add something, as like me, I suppose she's following what happens day per day, and she probably want to join this point.
Yes, thank you, Patrizia. Well, this was a clear, a long-expected crisis. Matteo Renzi, who's now the leader, who's got out of the Democratic Party and is now the leader of a very small party called Italia Viva, has started this crisis. Actually, it appears the crisis was started because he didn't get enough of a share of the recovery fund, and he asked strongly for Italy to access to European stability measures in order to fund for healthcare systems. So he has shown how far he can get. It's not so far because his deputies, he controls a certain number of MPs, but not enough. He has not so much of a control on them because they know that they will not be re-elected if we go to a real crisis and elections. So he did everything he could. He went as far as he could. He made the government weaker, that's true, but I think it was a defeat for him in the first place. So maybe in the long term, it will make the Italian government stronger. That's all about. That's my view on this crisis. It was, as we say in Italy, it was ridiculous, but not. It was dramatic, but not serious.
Thank you, Simona. We have a question from Renata.
Very quick. So it captured my attention that actually Italy is co-hosting the COP26 in Milan, the pre-COP26, and is the co-host of the COP in Glasgow, together with the UK, and at the same time is the host of the G20 this year. So not to be answered today, but just to mention not only to you, but to all the people watching this online, it is, we are early enough to prepare and to prepare something with impact. Because I think that at least when I was working on the preparation for the COP in Chile, all these international events are a great opportunity not only to reflect on global issues, of course, and challenge the system, but also to attract the attention, the international attention to what's going on inside the countries. So if we can connect somehow, you know, I think I love this inside-outside game. If we can connect somehow, if you have links, if you have contacts, especially on civil society involved in these two big and significant spaces, it will be very interesting. I invite you know, the new DMers to check what we did in Hamburg years ago. I think that we need to go bigger, bolder, and better this year. And Italy is a great place to activate, and it's a great place to go if we can, or to be digitally present if we cannot.
Yes, yes, Renata, you're perfectly right. Absolutely. I think we absolutely need to move on in that direction. We have to work on that, but I can say that we already start doing that. And yes, we can probably, if Simone agreed, to prepare something even for our next incoming Zoom meeting in order to give a concrete and real update on these topics. That's for sure. Thanks for remembering us.
Very well. So we have Jordi next and then Ivana.
Okay, thank you and good evening. I just wanted to go back to something that Yanis said and complement it a little bit about the recovery fund. This week has been published in Spain the rule that is gonna how is this recovery fund gonna distribute in Spain. And it's very interesting because it has 3 points that I guess it's gonna repeat in every country in Europe. One is the concentration of these recovery funds in the big companies. It's funny that the rule is exactly the same rule that the Big Companies Association, COE in Spain, has proposed the government, exactly the same. And it has a technical office which is composed by themselves, by the COE. So the medium-sized companies is going to be absolutely out from this recovery fund. And on the second point is that it's going to be very few public control. They say that they have to distribute these funds so urgently that they cannot apply the usual rules for when the government gives money to companies. So they're going to do whatever, they're going to distribute it to whomever they want, and they want to use it however they want. And finally, they also avoid all the requirements about social requirements and green requirements that there were very few requirements from the public funds, but they're not going to use them in this situation. So big companies, no public control, and no green and social requirements. So this is how it is going to work.
Thank you. Ivana next.
Yanis has a response to Jordi, and I would love.
Ivana, I'm sorry. And yet, This is such a wonderful exposition of our collective defeat, because remember, the great public demonstrations of the indignados in Spain, of the Aganactismeni in Greece and so on, yielded Syriza in Greece, which implemented the austerity, and now you have Podemos in government. And what are they going to do about it? Nothing. Either they resign and they disappear, or they stay in government and they disappear. There is no third option. Disappearance is what happens when you fail to seize the moment, you know, carpe diem and all that.
What I wanted to say actually links very well to what you just said, Yanis. DiEM was and still is very good in giving prognosis and analysis. And unfortunately, our prophecies from the 2016 are coming to, becoming the truth, unfortunately. So one thing about the health system and the vaccination and basically what is coming from the mainstream media is something that should be an important debate within DiEM. Is what does DiEM do about it? Because some topics were claimed by the right, so to say. So any kind of questioning of vaccination or quality of the vaccine, not the vaccination, is labeled as anti-vaxxers and conspiracy theorists and so on. So I think that we must not shy away from these topics when we have relevant views, expertise. And I think that our thematic groups are perfect places where we can have experts to have these debates, and because we shouldn't, again, shy away from criticizing our governments during the corona crisis, because they are doing their best. As Jordi said, not really. They are promising a lot, but then the outcomes are in favor for the companies. So I think that would be an interesting debate within DiEM, and maybe taking away a couple of labels that we are rushing to use sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivana. We have Simona to reply.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to add something on the point of vaccines. The whole coronavirus history showed what's the effect of the market and fragmentation on our health. I think as DiEM25, we should fight to make, first of all, anti-pandemic vaccines and treatment public and free for everybody. And we should contest the fact that every nation and even every country and every region has different ways of access to vaccines, different rights to be vaccinated or to be treated for COVID. And no country took into account the consequences, the social economic consequences of lockdowns and COVID on different classes. This is something we should address too. But going back to the healthcare system issues about COVID, the whole production of vaccines and their distribution showed the costs of fragmentation, of competition. We have, instead of cooperation at an world stage about vaccines and about finding out treatments and finding out how the epidemic works. Every studying group worked on its own. Every vaccine producer worked on his own, and this led to a monster, to create a monster. So we have corruption about selling vaccines, but the worst is we have a rush to sell vaccines and a competition about it, instead of looking for the wealth of the human beings. So it's always an issue of putting the market before the well-being of humans.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Thank you, Simona. I would stack myself for a moment. I think that what's most revealing in this crisis is that the reputation of parties and representatives is so much more important. Like, for example, here in Germany with the elections coming up, it's so much more important than to handle this crisis well. And I think it's what politicians always do, is to be about their voters and their target group, and to act according to what they think is right. But now we have this scenario where this mismanagement, for example, in Germany, is unveiling how less politics is really about handling the crisis and having the humans in the middle of the crisis, and being all about how to help most people in this crisis through to economic crisis or health crisis. But it's all about how to handle all groups that might be against restrictions, against closing parts of the economy. And I think it should be an eye-opener for all people who are blind to it until this point. And I think this is also something that we as a movement can be there, and we can have these discussions with people now, because it's in the open.
May I add just one point? Sorry, but this is my stuff. This crisis showed what happened to the World Health Organization after 20 years of unfunding, and because of its dependence on governments. We have a scandal in Italy in this moment, because an article about how the first months of crisis were handled in Italy has been suppressed by Italian government. The fact was that we hadn't emergency preparedness plan adjourned, but actually the emergency preparedness plans just told you should have people stay home until you have a vaccine. The plans from the WHO. And in the former crisis about in the former pandemic, that was influenza virus H1N1, WHO proved to be biased by corporations advice on putting the staff of the crisis too high. They treated the H1N1 epidemic like if it was the COVID crisis, and it proved to be just an influenza, not worse than others. And the blame for this misvaluation went to the WHO instead of going to the fact that it's a government-funded organization. People have almost no control on it, and instead governments and corporations have a great deal of control on it. So a reform of the WHO should be at an international level one of our goals too.
Thank you, Simona. Who wants to speak next? I have no one on the list. Maybe welcome, Srečko. Maybe you want to say something.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Sorry for being late. Well, I'm just listening by for now because I just arrived. So I'll skip it for now.
Okay, then I would say we are through our live stream agenda. And I would say